Florida Live starts now.
Well, good afternoon to you and welcome into Florida Live. I'm Garrett Wymer, and thanks for joining us on this Tuesday afternoon, live on Fox Local, YouTube, and on Fox 35 TV. If you've been with us this afternoon, we have been taking you to a lot of these Veterans Day events that have been going on across Florida, across the country. It is Veterans Day, and so to all of you who may have served or are currently serving our country, we thank you for your service. Let me give you a live look right now at downtown Orlando and Lake Eola on this Tuesday afternoon. It has been a chilly one. It was downright cold overnight. It's going to be another cold night tonight. So let's check in with Fox 35 Storm Team meteorologist Noah Bergren, who joins us live from Studio A right now. And Noah, at least the sun is warming things up a little bit, but certainly not as much as we might think.
No, Garrett, but the good news is if you don't like it, I'm just focused on the positive, my friend. It's about 80 by the weekend. So,
okay.
Were you up early this morning? I have to ask, how did you feel about the cold this morning? Was it a shock? Not too bad? What'd you think?
So normally I get up and I run before work. I woke up this morning, I looked at the temperature and I said, no, you know what? I'm going to run after work today.
Well, very good. Well, what's more of the impact to you, the wind or the temperature when it's like this?
A little bit of both. I would say the wind, when it's that cold, when you've got that breezy wind, those gusts that we saw, that's not fun. I don't want to be out in that.
Well, Garrett, the good news is after tomorrow morning we are home free from this.
All right.
Home free from this cool spell. But we do have a lot to recap from this morning. It was really a pretty notable couple of hours here earlier today with what did end up verifying as record cold across most of central Florida. Now today the average high is still about 80 and we're going to remain below the average low for this time of the year. Here's a view from Daytona Beach. Nobody obviously going in the water right now. Low temperatures this morning, 32 in Ocala. We had 35 as the forecast last night in Orlando. We ended up at 36, so pretty good forecast there within a degree. 38 this morning in Tampa, a new record there. 37 in Melbourne, a new record there. 45 in West Palm, 49 in Miami, 42 in Fort Myers, no record there. But essentially from Central Florida up to the Panhandle, most places did in fact set records. These were the actual observed morning lows today. We are at 36 in Sanford, Lake Mary, and New Smyrna Beach. 34 in DeLand this morning. 34 in the Villages. 35 in Leesburg. We had Ocala, Gainesville at 30. Interestingly, they did not get as cold as it looks, but still at or below freezing. 31 Gainesville, 32 this morning in Ocala, 35 in Clearmont, and the only spot that stayed in the 40s was Cocoa Beach at 42. All right, so here were the records from this morning. Orlando 36 beats the old record from 39 of 1932. Daytona, interestingly, got colder than we thought by several degrees. I think we had last night and even this morning, the storm team, we had about 39. So that's probably the most surprising number here of all of Central Florida. Let me go back and show you one more time. Is Daytona. And the reason why, there's a lot of, we can roll up our sleeves and get into the meteorology here, but one of the more fascinating things about this morning's cold is that you have to have the perfect wind direction this early in the year, or conversely, if we were, let's say, in March, to get this cold early or late in the winter, you have to have the wind perfect. And the reason why is because the water to our right, to our left, in the Gulf and the Atlantic, is still really warm. In fact, the water offshore is still in the 70s, meaning if the wind was blowing from the northeast, never in a million years would you have Daytona Beach at night 35. The wind has to perfectly be blowing all over land from South Georgia, from the northwest to the southeast to get to the beaches this cold, and it was the perfect wind direction for that. So interestingly, Daytona did tie a record, which is, again, getting it to that cold this early in the year on the beach is pretty impressive. 37 in Melbourne, a new record. Vero Beach, a new record. Leesburg, a new record. And stop me if you heard this before, Sanford, Lake Mary as well. So downtown right now, it's still breezy. I just came into work a few minutes ago, and the wind is not as much as it was this morning. I think that's the big difference I've noticed in the last few hours. The wind is starting to come down, but it's still cloudless out there. But on the beaches, you can clearly see in the palms here, there's still enough of a wind to create a wind chill. Temperature in Titusville sitting at about 57. So the wind gusts are now, they're about 15 to 20. Earlier this morning during GDO, we had wind gusts of about 25 to 35. So the winds have come down and they'll go calm tonight. Now, We talked about this yesterday, Garrett. The humidity is like bottom of the chart. Now, you ever go to Phoenix, Mexico, Las Vegas? This is the level of humidity that it normally is there. And in Florida, we'll get this in 1 or 2 or maybe 3 of the biggest cold fronts in any given winter, and we have it with this one. A dew point of 17 in Sanford is extraordinarily dry. It's pretty close to, all of these numbers are pretty close to record lows ever for November, to have the humidity this low. And remember, we best describe the humidity with the dew point, not the relative humidity. That's a percent you see in your weather apps or online. All that tells you is how close the temp and the dew point are. Meaning, if the air temp was 25 or 20 right now in Orlando, the relative humidity would be 100%, but that doesn't feel humid. These dew points are nowhere, they're a million years from feeling humid. I just wanted to make mention of it. It is a remarkably dry air mass that's coming to Florida right now and will be with us through tomorrow. So if you notice, if you're outside a lot, maybe like Garrett, and you're running, dry skin, dry lips, it can develop pretty quick with the lack of moisture in the air like we have right now. Wind chills are not too bad. Here's the temperatures right now: 56 in Sanford, 56 in the Villages, 55 in Kissimmee. And now highs will also challenge records for the coldest high temperature for this date. Now coming home from work and school, especially school, breezy and cool is the headline. All right, so for the next 12 hours in and around Orlando, we'll dip to about 41 by 2-3 in the morning. We'll be back into the 40s by about 8 o'clock. In and around Orlando on this Veterans Day evening. Now, wake-up temps tomorrow. We will have freeze concerns again for Ocala and Gainesville, so cover over your plants there. Now, it's interesting tonight, the temperatures are higher than they were last night, but the chance of frost is higher. The reason why is that the winds are going to go calm overnight. It's really hard to next to impossible to get frost when there's so much wind blowing. Like, remember what frost is? It's moisture on surfaces that evaporates. It freezes on your car hood, on the mailbox, on your windows. And frost can form on elevated surfaces, cars, the rooftops. You often see them in the mornings, early and late in the winter on people's houses, but not the grass, because elevated surfaces can get a little colder. So even though 39 Sanford tonight, 40 Orlando, even though these temps are a few digits higher than last night, because it's going to be pristinely clear out and the winds are going to go calm, we might wake up to a pretty decent frost in many locations tomorrow morning. So take note of that. Early in the morning, you may have to defrost the car windshield early in the morning tomorrow. Now, the cold is going to move out pretty quick. It's out of here for later this week, and the pattern will flip. I do think by the middle of next week will be 85 to 90 once again here in Florida. Now, I don't have a graphic for this yet. I'm going to try to work on it for the news tonight. So if you want to see it, tune in tonight at 5, 6, 8, 10, and 11. We'll talk about it more. But the long-range outlook into December is very, very turbulent in the eastern U.S. It's looking pretty clear that this is going to be a front-loaded winter, which we do have correlation to the hurricane season. Oftentimes when we see hurricane seasons that are backloaded, meaning all the activities in the second half of hurricane season, winter starts off with a lot of big cold shots in North America, and particularly in the eastern United States. So I do think something like what we had today, where it's really intensely cold for a brief period of time, then it gets warm again, we're going to have a lot of this, a lot more than what's normal now through Christmas, through the end of the year. But next week we go back to warm, and then there's already signs of something similar like this about a week and a half to 2 weeks out from now. So it's a storm team alert for the rest of the day today. Average high is 79. We're 27 degrees, I should say, below that. So very, very below normal. 69 tomorrow, 74 on Thursday. We're back to near 80 for the weekend, or into the 80s next Monday. And Garrett, I do think by this time next week, maybe next Wednesday, 85 to 90 looks like a good call. So, the whiplash of everybody getting sick with the freezing to the warm, that's always a thing we have to worry about like this. But the good news is, if you hate the cold, we appease everybody here. See, this is what
That's
I like
right.
about the weather, Garrett, right? Is that if you like the cold today, if you like the heat, you'll have next week.
A little bit of everything. That's what we like to see. I'll be glad to see the 70s come back here very soon. So Fox 35 Storm Team meteorologist Noah Bergren, we appreciate you joining us.
Thank you.
As we talked about at the top of the show, it is Veterans Day today. There have been a number of those events across the state today. One of them happened just a little bit ago in Sarasota, where we heard from Senator Ashley Moody, who spoke a little bit about service and sacrifice. And here's just a little bit of what she had to say.
Thank you for not only being here, but continuing to gather to support one another. Because we know that post active duty, you still have to support your brothers and sisters in arms. It is so important. You answered the call. Many didn't. You answered the call bravely, selflessly to serve this nation. Many of you decided you wanted to serve and no one ever asked. You just signed up and enlisted. I admire both of you so much. The oldest boy in our family told us, I think when he was 14, that he wanted to serve, and certainly went on and demonstrated that commitment to our nation. And I am always in awe and continue to be in awe of those people that say, I'll sign up to defend the freedom for the generations to come, because we know that we can't rest on our laurels, that it takes every generation having those special men and women that are called to this service or answer the call and showing up. Showing up when other Americans won't. Showing up because they know this country is worth it. And the ideals that we were founded on, they're worth it. And so today of all days, I think we gather to say thank you to our veterans of every branch. Certainly today, we're recognizing those who served in Vietnam. But it's a good day to remind ourselves that you have to continue to serve as the role models and the inspiration and the drive for the men and women that will come after you to do just like you did and serve the United States of America. And that is my mission, to make sure we still reach out and enlist the good men and women of integrity that will put their lives on the line on behalf of not just their fellow Americans, but what this country promises to be. And we celebrate 250 years next year of the United States of America. And if we're going to continue to be the greatest country on the face of this earth, it's going to take people like you coming behind you that are inspired by you.
Amen. We'll be right back with more Florida Live after this. Check out this live look from a Veterans Day event in Los Angeles right now. Welcome back into Florida Live. I'm Garrett Wymer, and thanks for joining us on this Tuesday afternoon live on Fox Local, YouTube, and on Fox 35 TV. It is time now for our Tampa Connection, and that means we go to Fox 13 Tampa Bay and check in with some of the big stories in the Bay Area. And so let's bring in Fox 13 news anchor Linda Hurtado joining us live now. And Linda, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Garrett. We're going to start in Pinellas County, where a late-night mad rush for pizza landed a Holiday woman in jail. This happened Thursday, according to the sheriff's office. So the deputies tell us that 21-year-old Yasmin Arazo was tracked driving 107 miles per hour in a Kia as she sped northbound on U.S. Highway 19, and this was in Palm Harbor. So on this stretch of highway, the speed limit is posted at 55. So she was going over 50 miles over the speed limit. And when the deputy pulled her over, she admitted that she was trying to get to Little Caesars before it closed. So now she faces a charge of dangerous, excessive speeding and has since bonded out of jail. Don't know if she ever got that pizza. Switching now to honor our veterans on Veterans Day. Habitat for Humanity in Tampa Bay, Hillsborough, spent the day today giving back to those who served our nation. Volunteers were out in Tampa repairing and building homes for local vets and their families. So this year's effort included installing some security fencing, along with roof replacements and other repairs completed earlier in the week. So one of the homeowners who was helped by the project is Linda Hardy. She is a widow, and her late husband was the veteran. And after a roof was damaged during Hurricane Milton, she says she struggled with insurance, couldn't get it fixed, and Habitat stepped in to help.
I received a letter from Citizen Insurance Company stating that I would not be able to, they would not cover me because of the roof. It was 20 years old, and I had to get another insurance company. I appreciate Habitat for Humanity for helping me out.
Well, the project is part of Habitat for Humanity's Veterans Build Week of Service, bringing together volunteers, businesses, and community partners. The organization plans to continue its Veteran Build initiatives year-round with additional repair projects already in the work. If you'd like some more information on how you can volunteer and help out our veterans, you can visit fox13news.com for more information on that. So the Tampa Bay Lightning, they were not on the ice yesterday. They were actually out on water to raise money for a really important cause, one that is close to the head coach's heart. All the players joined John Cooper on Monday for the 8th annual Coops Catch. That's an event that helps raise money to beat pediatric cancer. And all the proceeds from the day of fishing go to the J5 Foundation, which is the Cooper family charitable organization. And he says the event helps remind people of the importance of helping kids that are battling cancer.
This is just a stark reminder of the realities of some of the hardships that kids face, and so we're going to go out here and have a bunch of fun, and but in the end we know what the purpose of this is for, and we have heavy hearts for those that are in the hospital right behind us.
Well, along for the ride was NBA legend Charles Barkley, who says it's really cool to meet some of the kids and hear some of their stories. One of the stories is from 19-year-old Weston Herman, who beat brain cancer as a kid, and he came back once again to be with the team supporting other children.
Yeah, certainly a great cause, Linda, and love to see them out there for a very worthy cause.
Yeah, I'm kind of glad it happened the other day, though, and not this morning. Garrett, can you imagine if they were all out fishing?
Yeah, but you know what?
Been a cold catch.
They're used to that. They're hockey players, you know?
You're right.
Well, Fox 13 news anchor Linda Hurtado, we appreciate you joining us for our Tampa Connection.
Thanks so much, Garrett.
Also in the Tampa area today, a number of Veterans Day ceremonies. We took you to several of them, one in Palm Harbor in Pinellas County, also one in Hillsborough County, where we heard from Congresswoman Kathy Castor, who spoke at the event in Hillsborough County. Here's a little bit of what she had to say at that Veterans Day event just a little bit ago.
Well, good morning, everyone. We come together on this solemn day with hearts full of gratitude for our veterans who have devoted their lives to service to our democratic ideal, our Constitution, and our great country. This also includes our Gold Star families who we love, and I couldn't help but see this beautiful Gold Star memorial that they worked so hard on, along with the Veterans Council of Hillsborough County. Every day is Veterans Day here. And that's because we are a patriotic community. And I really want to thank each of the county commissioners, the entire board of county commissioners, for their enduring commitment to ensure that our veterans are welcome, that they receive the benefits they have earned, and that they bring us together month after month. This is a day where we recognize it, but this work is going on day after day in partnership with David Van Meter and everyone at the Tampa Haley VA, all of our veteran service organizations, all of you who often go the extra mile to look out for your brothers and sisters who have served us so well. Last year, my good friend and colleague, Congresswoman Laurel Lee, and I announced a federal community funding grant for the Veterans Resource Center here at the park. And today I'm really excited to announce some additional federal support for our community. Two local nonprofits, the Society of St. Vincent de Paul South and the Boley Centers, Inc., have just been awarded $2 million to ensure that veterans receive the mental health care services that they need, and that they have a safe place to lay their heads at night. These organizations better the lives of those who have served our country selflessly. I don't think anyone would disagree that our veterans deserve access to high-quality resources to find safe, affordable housing and mental health services. So those community partners work with Tampa Haley VA and the Bay Pines VA and our veteran service organizations, and Frank Strom and the Board of County Commissioners to ensure that we have a wide reach across the veterans community to continue to ensure that our service members and their families have all the tools that they need to thrive. I also want to thank Brigadier General Remo Butler, my good friend, retired Army Colonel Paul Huzar. I'm looking forward to hearing your words of wisdom today. We need it in this country. We have to work together, and let's mark this day as the time that we turned the page and saw each other as human beings, not a political party, all together in service for the great veterans who have served us so well. So God bless America, and God bless our wonderful veterans.
Congresswoman Kathy Castor speaking earlier today in Hillsborough County. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. Welcome back into Florida Live. I'm Garrett Wymer, and thanks for joining us on this Tuesday afternoon, live on Fox Local, YouTube, and on Fox 35 TV. Let's talk a little Florida politics, because there's been a lot going on and a lot to talk about with that. And so we're going to bring in Kimberly Leonard, a Politico reporter and the author of the Florida Playbook newsletter that you can get in your email inbox every morning. And Kimberly, we appreciate you joining us this afternoon here on Florida Live.
Back.
So let's start by talking a little bit about the 2026 governor's race. And let's start here. I know there's another expected entrant into this race, according to Politico's reporting. So what can you tell us about James Fishback?
Yeah, James Fishback, he talked to a colleague of mine, Sophia Kai at Politico, who's actually a White House reporter. He is an investor down here in Florida, lives in Madison, Florida. He wants to run for governor. He essentially says that he doesn't think that Byron Donalds is pro-DeSantis enough, and he wants to run on an anti-DEI platform, a strict immigration crackdown, and is trying to position himself as the kind of super DeSantis guy. I should add the governor has not endorsed in the race, and it's not even clear that he will. And on top of that, other Republicans in the race, like Byron Donalds and like Paul Renner, also consider themselves to be super pro DeSantis, but still adds a lot of interest to the race. I was surprised to learn that he's not independently wealthy, so it's not someone who could come in and self-fund, which is kind of what I thought initially. But it still is causing a lot of sort of backlash, heartburn, whatever you want to say, from a lot of folks in Trump world. He has a pretty big online following, and he's getting just some negative feedback from folks in Trump world who think that, everyone should basically get behind the person that the president endorsed, and that's Byron Donalds. So just someone that we're watching, and I think the field will only continue to grow.
Yeah, the Republican field certainly getting a little more crowded, it seems, and like you said, could get bigger. Speaking of Paul Renner, you had the chance to speak with him about health care. And you wrote about that this morning in today's Florida Playbook. What was that conversation about essentially writing a new health care plan to replace Obamacare?
Yeah, and so what I should back up for a second. So Paul Renner, who's the former House Speaker, rolled out a healthcare plan last week, and it had a lot of different components to it. He wants schools to have healthier meals. He wants vaccines to not be mandated. He wants parents to have more of a say in their kids' healthcare. He wants more wellness programs in the workplace. So a lot more of his healthcare plan kind of focused on that. But I ended up in my interview with him, which lasted almost an hour, I really ended up talking to him about one of the bullet points on his healthcare plan, which said that he thought that the U.S. should take another swing at trying to repeal Obamacare. And so, look, I'm a journalist who, before moving to Florida, spent 10 years covering mostly the Affordable Care Act up in Washington. I covered its implementation, which was a very rocky, glitch-filled launch. And then I covered how Americans really then came to back the Affordable Care Act when it almost got repealed under Trump's first term. And so I was really asking him a lot of kind of difficult questions, I would say, about the Affordable Care Act specifically, just because of my experience covering it, but also because a lot of the proposals he put forth about his vision for a new healthcare system had pretty much already been debated in Congress before. It doesn't mean they can't do it again, but it had sort of collapsed under political pressure. So what Paul Renner said essentially is that he would prefer that all the funding that's used for Obamacare, and it was very broad strokes. I should mention that he's not claiming to have a plan, precisely yet, but he wants to be able to try different things and have a future governor work with the federal government on states essentially taking the money that they would normally get for the Obamacare marketplaces and then using those to design their own healthcare systems. And so he sees something more in line with, making it easier to shop for healthcare. So when you go get, for non-emergency things, obviously, when you go to a different healthcare provider, knowing what things cost up front, maybe being able to use a health savings account, which is a tax-free debit card that people can use to pay for healthcare. Again, it's politically fraught, but he really wants to try to embrace it. It's just that the last time this was explored, people got very nervous about losing coverage for pre-existing conditions. And this country still hasn't found a good way to cover people with very serious illnesses chronic illnesses and just big emergencies that can happen to any of us, even unexpectedly as well.
So that's on the Republican side of things in the governor's race. So let's talk about the Democratic race. We know Jerry Demings jumping in last week. David Jolly, the other kind of front runner when it comes to the Democratic primary race. Those two are the big name candidates that are there right now. And you wrote about some of the storylines that we should be watching for as this primary race kind of heats up.
That's right. I went up to Orlando and I was reflecting on just some of the ways that the primary could play out, just some of the big things that I'm going to be watching for. So I think number one is that this is obviously going to be a battle over who's the, quote, real Democrat, right, in the race, because David Jolly, up until this year, was an independent voter. And prior to that, when he served in Congress, he was a Republican. So the debate over, who can best represent the party and bring people together is going to be, front and center in this primary. I think with Jerry Demings as well, he and David Jolly are both centrist Democrats. So even though Republicans would like to frame the two of them as being, these far left socialist figures, they are not that. There's nothing in their policies that's that way. And in fact, they are very much tacking toward the center. So I think that this primary is not going to be unless someone else gets in on the progressive side, they're not going to be battling over, who is insufficiently progressive, as we would see a lot of other Democratic campaigns take place, across the U.S. I think race is going to be a big factor in this. Potentially Florida is looking at having, two Black candidates at the top of the ticket in Byron Donalds and Byron Donalds and
Jerry Demings.
Yeah. And so that means that, it could be a historic change for Florida. And so there's just some of the different things that are going to play out. I'm also watching John Morgan, the billionaire who is very close to the Demings couple, and also, hasn't decided whether he'll fund his campaign. But if he does, that could be a big change in the race. So there's just a bunch of things that I'm keeping my eye on as I continue to cover this race.
Meanwhile, we're looking ahead to the 2026 governor's race, but before that, there's a 2026 legislative session here in Florida, and we're starting to see some of the things kind of be filed, things that we have seen before in Tallahassee.
Yeah, I was just sort of taking stock this week on a lot of the legislation that some of it has already, been heard in different interim committee meetings. And I noticed, hey, there's some stuff that has come up before. So I thought it'd be good to do a playbook on some of the items that had previously been discussed. I would say number one on the list is Senate President Ben Albritton's vision to do a rural renaissance so that people who live in rural parts of the state can better access healthcare, education, better infrastructure. Last year, a bill that would have provided $200 million toward that cause did not make it through. And so this year it might have a better chance because actually the state of Florida has applied for a multi-million-dollar grant from the federal government specifically to address rural healthcare. So that could really help with that tab this time around. We're also seeing the Black History Museum reemerge, a question over where exactly it should be placed. Last year, they managed to get funding to get it going, but there's some disagreement about what part of the state it should be in. A panel that was independently appointed by the legislature and by the governor had determined it should be West Augustine, and a lot of Black members of the legislature just don't agree. They think it should be in a part of the state where there's a larger Black population. And then there's a lot of other measures that are coming up on immigration, including, whether businesses should require E-Verify for every single employer in the state versus those with 25 or more employees. And then there's a bunch of legislation that kind of looks at wrongful death and other kinds of lawsuits and things like that. So, that's not unusual to see things come back again and again, but I think it does help to show readers, look, here's what legislators are interested in fighting for, and here's what they're kind of trying to show their base they think still matters.
Yeah, going to be interesting to watch what happens with that. Last thing here, we are just about out of time, Kimberly, but what's next? What are you going to be watching for?
Oh, well, tonight I will be covering the Republicans of Miami-Dade. They're having their Lincoln Day dinner. So I'm going to be watching. Byron Donalds is going to be there. Daniel Perez, who's the House Speaker, is going to be there. I'm interested to see if he is going to be addressing any of his feud with the governor, if he's even going to be willing to talk to reporters about it. And Ted Cruz is speaking, the senator from Texas. And so I think that he'll speak very heavily to the Cuban community here. And so I'm just interested to see how it all goes. Ted Cruz did endorse Byron Donalds today ahead of their dinner together. So I just think the dynamics are going to be really interesting to be watching.
Yeah, big night in Miami. Look forward to reading about it in Florida Playbook. Kimberly Leonard, Politico reporter and Florida Playbook author. We appreciate your time and always good talking with you here on Florida Live.
Thanks so much.
We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. Welcome back into Florida Live. I'm Garrett Wymer, and thanks for joining us on this Tuesday afternoon, live on Fox Local, YouTube, and on Fox 35 TV. An update now on a case, a story that we've been following for a while now, surrounding an FWC employee who was fired just a few days after sharing a social media post in the aftermath of the death of Charlie Kirk. So this happened back in September. When we first started tracking this story, Brittany Brown worked as a biologist for FWC and shared a social media post that FWC said made light of Kirk's death. So she was fired. There was a lawsuit filed against the FWC over that termination. And yesterday in Tallahassee, big hearing in federal court. I want to bring in Gary Ettinger, who is an attorney representing Brittany Brown in this lawsuit. He's a well-known First Amendment attorney out of the Gainesville area, and disclosure, also the father of one of our great reporters here at Fox 35, Marie Ettinger. So, Gary, good talking with you. We appreciate you joining us this afternoon here on Florida Live.
Thanks for having me.
So, Gary, first, this big hearing yesterday in this case, I know seeking an injunction that would require the state to reinstate Brittany Brown in this case. The state says essentially that they got hundreds of complaints about this social media post and that had they not fired her, it would have continued to disrupt operations and erode public trust of the FWC. What was your argument against that in court yesterday?
A nutshell, a couple things. One is you have to consider who Brittany Brown is. She's a state biologist. She's not head of an agency. She doesn't make policy. She doesn't really have a forward-facing role. She's a biologist. And so the idea that that's going to bring the agency into disrepute for what she does on her own time, a private social media post, that just doesn't carry any water. In terms of the backlash, if you will, there's no evidence other than a statement that says we received 100 media calls or 100 citizen complaints. So if that happened, you'd expect FWC to come forward and submit those into evidence to show this, public outcry that's somehow going to interfere with the mission of the agency. And that didn't happen. Also, we're in a social media connected world. And for citizens to respond to a viral post, in this case by a group called Libs of TikTok, who don't like posts like this Charlie Kirk meme, to say that 100 people contacted the agency is nothing. That just is a click of a button these days. The crucial legal question is whether the post actually interfered with the agency's operations. And the evidence in this case shows that's not true, that the people who Ms. Brown actually works with, her colleagues at FWC, are rather supportive of her. She's in the running for an award they call the Purveyor of Awesomeness. So the evidence is exactly the opposite of what the state would have to show for, some sort of discord that shuts down the operations of the office. So when we're balancing First Amendment versus the needs of government can't just say, oh, we were inconvenienced. That does not outweigh the vital First Amendment interests of citizens in this country.
What's most concerning to you about this case?
A couple of things. One actually is the close relationship apparently between this social media site Libs of TikTok and the administration. So what we see here is the Libs of TikTok website actually published a statement saying that Britt Brown had been fired by FWC before that was even publicly announced. So, that close interaction between a right-wing media site and government is kind of disconcerting. No one should have that level of influence. And the other thing that's troublesome is, we're citizens in an American democracy. We're supposed to be able to speak our minds without fear of being punished. And so cancel culture is a thing, but that's just private citizens doing private citizen stuff. When government is involved, we cannot tolerate that kind of censorship. And particularly over something as inoffensive as Ms. Brown's post. She's not advocating for violence. She's not saying we should overthrow the administration and kick all the Charlie Kirks in America out. She's just making a statement that, America's going to move on, that the death of Charlie Kirk was not a personal tragedy for her. And it also includes a political statement objecting to one of the more outrageous things that Mr. Kirk said during his life. Citizens are supposed to be able to say that without fear of losing their job. That's why we're in court.
But does the First Amendment shield employees from the consequences of the speech they make, even if the speech itself is protected?
A qualified yes. So when government is the employer, citizens have fewer First Amendment rights, or they're more limited rights than if it was just you or I posting on our own Facebook. So I'm employed in the private sector, right? I'm my own boss. But when government's involved, government also has to control the employment setting, but it has to be consistent with the First Amendment. And we've got, really sophisticated rules to show how that's supposed to work out in court. We call it the Pickering balancing test. So at our arguments yesterday, we had plenty to say about that. So it's a sophisticated issue. There's not a simple yes or no. But in Ms. Brown's case, it comes about as close to an absolute yes First Amendment rules as you're going to see in these cases. Again, because there's no disruption, no evidence of disruption shown by the agency, her post was not offensive or calling for violence. And again, no disharmony in her office. Her relationship with her peers is unaffected by what amounts to a private political statement.
As I understand it from what you said to reporters outside the courthouse yesterday, you've been contacted by other government employees as well who've been fired for posting negative comments in the aftermath of the death of Charlie Kirk.
Yeah, I've had serious discussions with about half dozen. I assume some of those will eventually turn into litigation themselves. But, dozens and dozens of people were terminated or being investigated or were suspended. I've talked to a college professor. I talked to a public school educator. It's been a pretty widespread thing in our state. And there's at least one reported case from out in South Dakota where an art professor was suspended from his teaching. So it's not an isolated thing, it's across the country. But the magnitude of it, the sheer number of people seems to be unique to Florida.
Yeah, we have seen quite a crackdown and a big focus on that here. Does that reaction or response surprise you?
Very much so, very much so. So in part because it's what we call viewpoint-based discrimination. So the state's not letting people go who are, said favorable things about Mr. Kirk. And whatever you think about Mr. Kirk or his politics, he was a very divisive figure in our country. Not everyone was on board with his political and religious message. We've got to be able to debate that sort of thing openly. And when we see firings because of political posts, we saw a number of them, for instance, in the middle of the George Floyd Black Lives Matter cultural movement. They tend to be very isolated. You just don't see the mass firings, suspensions, and investigations you do in regard to Charlie Kirk. There's something about his assassination that has really struck a nerve, I think, with the conservative members of our society, and particularly, I think, with the DeSantis administration.
So what's next with this lawsuit as we wait on a ruling on that injunction?
Plenty to do and in short time, actually. So injunctions are extraordinary remedies. They're hardly ever granted. And particularly when we're dealing with employment and our request to reinstate Ms. Brown to her job, that's just not usually granted at the front end of a case. Perhaps we'll be successful, perhaps not. But Judge Walker has put us on an extremely accelerated schedule in terms of finishing our depositions, doing our paperwork for summary judgment. So the case will conclude sometime early next year, regardless of how the injunction goes. So, we had a lot of good work to do on Monday, and we're going to be really busy over the holidays and into the new year to finish up the case.
All right, Gary Ettinger, First Amendment attorney, representing Brittany Brown in this case, this lawsuit against the FWC over her firing. We appreciate you joining us, giving us an update on what happened in court yesterday in Tallahassee, and I hope to talk to you again.
Thanks, Garrett. It was a pleasure.
We are going to take a quick break here on Florida Live, but keep it right here because we have much more to come. And let me give you a live look right now at downtown Orlando and Lake Eola on this Tuesday afternoon. Keep it right here on Fox Local, YouTube, and Fox 35 TV. We've got more Florida Live next. Welcome back into Florida Live. Here's a live look right now at FlightAware's misery map, and it still has a lot of delays and cancellations to track today. 424 delays, 183 cancellations across the country. This is just between noon and 4 p.m. So still seeing impacts from flights today on what is day 42 of the government shutdown. Yes, there is an end in sight with the House expected to vote tomorrow on what the Senate passed yesterday after 8 Senate Democrats essentially crossed the aisle and voted in support of the funding bill. But what we heard today from Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy was that even once the government reopens, it may not be immediate that air traffic controllers are back at their posts, and that the FAA mandated cuts on air traffic will go back to full capacity. Here's a little bit of what Secretary Duffy said earlier today.
And so we're at the cusp of hopefully having the government reopened. I'm concerned that we're not going to have on day one controllers come back into the towers right away. I'm asking them to do that. President Trump has asked them to do that. It is their jobs and they will be paid, but it might not be immediate that they come back in. And so we're going to watch, analyze, encourage them to come back. But again, we're going to start to alleviate the restrictions that we're at 6% now. We'll alleviate that only when the data says we should. Well, I think what we have to realize is we have some controllers who are put in a very difficult position. They're young. They don't make a lot of money when they first start out. They can make some good money later in their careers, but when they start out, they're not making a lot. They may be the sole source of income. And they were confronted with a real problem. Do I not feed my family? Or do I try to find another pathway to put food on the table? And that was very real. And I'm cognizant of that. I don't want to be unfair to people. And that was what they were confronted with. On the flip side, the president yesterday said we are going to reward the controllers that actually came to work, that had no missed scheduled days of work. A $10,000 bonus. He put it out. I couldn't agree with him more. We should reward them. Now, how many I'm going to have that actually showed up every single scheduled day, I'm not sure. We have to analyze that. But I also want to look and say, do we have a continual bad actors? Were some controllers from the very beginning, when they hadn't missed a paycheck, had they started to take time off because the shutdown was an excuse for them? We'll look at those people and we'll work with the union and see what an appropriate response from the FAA will be.
Should they be docked, as the president said?
Well, so the way this bill, I believe, is going to work is they won't be docked, they'll be paid. So it depends on, are we going to have air traffic controllers come into work? And if we have the controllers showing up, I think we're going to be back to regular flight schedules. Again, I can't control the weather, you know that. I can't control if there's issues on aircraft that's mechanical, but with regard to controlling the airspace, we'll be up and running. I will say, I believe that in this package to reopen the government, our controllers could be paid within 48 hours of the government opening. So they could, not all of it, I think it's a 70% payment, but they'll get a big lump sum of what they're due, which is helpful. They don't have to wait another 2 weeks to be paid.
So that is something to watch. Secretary Sean Duffy earlier today. Let me give you a live look right now. This is in California, another Veterans Day event going on there. This is in the San Fernando Valley, the Veterans Day Parade getting ready to get underway as a full day of celebrations and commemorations continue across the country. We have taken you to many of those. We listened earlier today to President Trump speaking in Washington, D.C. after he laid a wreath at the tomb of the unknown soldier. Just a number of events across the area. We had an event at the Orlando Science Center in Orlando earlier today at the Red Tails Monument there that honors the Tuskegee Airmen. So we want to give you some of the highlights from some of these events throughout the region today. And here's a little bit of what we heard and saw at these services and ceremonies on this Veterans Day.
Currently, less than 1% of the population serves in the military for all branches. In many ways, you are an elite group for your sacrifice and for your commitment to our country. In that spirit, you answered the call. The spirit that says, when my country calls, I will answer. As a veteran, I am very grateful to be here with you today to honor all veterans who answered the call, those who came before us, those who stood alongside of us, and those who will come after us. Veterans and service members, if you're able, please stand to be recognized.
I remember when probably 20% of the members of Congress were veterans. They don't understand us. They are not us. We, as veterans, need to start educating people on what we are, who we are, what we did, and what we can still do.
Those are just from a couple of the events in Pinellas and Hillsborough counties earlier today. We appreciate you joining us today on this Veterans Day. Again, if you are a veteran or if you are an active duty service member, we want to thank you for your service on this day. We will see you tomorrow with more Florida Live. In the meantime, let me give you a live look at downtown Orlando.
Hello, everybody. Meteorologist Bergren here. Hello, how are you? Hope you've had a great day so far today and are staying warm. Again, Storm Team Meteorologist Bergren here on a Tuesday, the 11th of November, 2025, on what has been a historic day of weather here in Central Florida. We do have new records that have been set all up and down the state for the temperatures from this morning. And out there right now, it is still freezing. Let me know where you're watching from on Facebook, YouTube, and those of you on our Fox Local and web stream, you will see a 2-minute break coming up at 3:10 and 3:20, each lasting for 2 minutes. So those of you watching on our app, web, and Fox Local stream, again, from 3:10 to 3:12 and 3:20 to 3:22, you'll see me go away to a quick break, and then it'll come back. We'll keep the weather coverage trucking until 3:30. But on Facebook, YouTube, we go straight with no breaks through the end of the half hour. So if you have a question, comment, or concern, please let me know on Facebook, YouTube, or just let me know what you think of the cold. I mean, it was freezing. There's no other way to say it. It was actually freezing this morning with the wind especially. Now, I do want to show you the current conditions out there because we do have the cold starting to retreat to the east. In fact, it only feels like 53 right now in Orlando, which... that's a record for the afternoon, yes, but look to our west. It's already 56 in New Orleans, 65 in Dallas, and in fact, it's warmer in Nebraska than it is here. That just tells you the jet stream pattern. You can see that across the country. 27 Pittsburgh, 37 Knoxville, and you can see that the points of this map is that the jet stream is right here. This is the jet stream, like that. So here's all the warmth. Here's all the cold, and the cold is going to swing on out heading into the weekend, and we're going to get all this warmth that's in the west back into Florida. So let's talk about the records that were set this morning. Well, first let me just show you the temperatures right now. So here we are. It's about 3:04. 56, the Villages. It's only 57 in Orlando. Most of these readings will, in fact, set records for the lowest afternoon high temperatures for this date on record. Just 54 now in New Smyrna and Daytona, 56 in St. Cloud, 56 in Cocoa Beach, and 57 currently in the Melbourne area. The winds are not nearly as strong as they were this morning. The winds this morning were about 30 to 35 miles an hour. Right now they're only about 10 to 25 miles an hour. So the winds have definitely come down significantly compared to where they were earlier today. Now across the state, I don't even want to call it warmer, but it is a slight bit warmer. It's into the mid-60s once you get down to Miami and West Palm. 66 in West Palm, Miami, 56 Ocala, 54 Jacksonville, and 59 currently in Tampa. The other headline is the low humidity. I mean, it is remarkably dry out there. These dew points are like, holy cow, level dry. If you've spent any time outside today, and you notice dry skin, dry lips, it's because there's no moisture in the air. I mean, these dew points are, this is as dry the air will ever get in Florida for any time of the winter season. I suppose it's possible we still have a little bit of dryness to go. If we had like a historic freeze outbreak of where the actual air temps got into the 20s in most of Florida and we had snow, then the humidity could be lower, I guess, which has happened before, but it's like twice every 100 years. But my point is, this is close to as dry as the atmosphere will ever get over Florida right now, at least over north and central Florida. You see the dew point is just 19 in Orlando, and you see the color table there. I mean, it's almost at the bottom of the color table there in terms of how dry the air is right now. So let me show you the lows from last night and this morning. So we'll start with the lows from locally here. So here were the lows today, and the places following here set new records. I've got the list here. So we've got Orlando is a new record. Sanford is a new record. Leesburg a new record. Daytona Beach, Melbourne, and Leesburg, DeLand. So we don't have records for like places like Titusville, New Smyrna. There's no airport or observing sensor there. So the point is, every spot in our area that had an official record-keeping location that we have weather records for is a new record for the date. Pretty significant. Now we had 35 for a forecast low for this morning from yesterday at this time on the afternoon and in the night news. We ended at 36. So that ended up being pretty good. The only surprise was Daytona Beach. I think we had Yesterday, between GDO, Brooks, and Jess, and then me in the night, we kind of kept the continuity in the storm team. About, I think it was 38 we had, 37, 38 at least, and then it trended it down. But that's a surprising one because that Daytona Beach, there was a little bit of uncertainty if it actually would get that cold. And it's fascinating why, because it's really hard this early in the year to get these temperatures this cold. You have to have the wind that blows in this direction. You have to. It has to blow all over land from Georgia all the way like this. And the reason why is because if the wind blew like this or like this, the water in the Gulf in the Atlantic is still really warm. So if you had, let's say, a wind from the northeast like this, all of these 70s water temps, that air would blow over the land. You would never have the temperatures this cold this early in the year. So meteorologically, it is very uncommon to rare to have even Palm Coast, Daytona, granted it's at the airport, it's a little bit inland, even New Smyrna and Titusville and Melbourne get all into the mid-30s this early in the year because the wind has to be perfectly only, if and only in this direction from the north-northwest to get it like that. And that's essentially how it was last night into this morning. So there were the lows since midnight. Here were the lows across the state. Let me know where you're watching from if you have a question, a comment, a concern. How do you feel about the cold? Would love to hear from you. Let's see. Questions are coming in fast. Watching from Connecticut 37 here, says my mother. Hello. Miss you, love you. Let's see here. Pull up some of your questions. Jude says, hey, everybody. What's up, Orlando? Karen, how are you? Let's see. Let me pick a couple questions here, and let me pull some of them up. So let's start with this question here. If you have a question, I would love to hear from you. Let's talk some weather. That's what we're here for. So the first one here is William. It's really by the weekend that things get back to normal. So how long is the cold here for? Wednesday and Thursday. After Thursday, it's gone. Morning lows are back close to normal, which is in the 50s for this time of the year. Now, we do have cold air again for tonight that will potentially cause some freezing issues again. Now, this is from Tuesday morning. Let me get you the lows for tonight. So here's the lows for tonight, which notice there again could potentially be some issues here again with freezing concerns overnight. So this is Wednesday morning's lows, about 37 in DeLand, 35 in the Villages, 33 in Ocala. The only change tomorrow is the winds are going to be oh so much lighter. There won't be anywhere near as much wind tomorrow as there was today. So the wind chill factor is going to be substantially lower tomorrow than it was out there for today. 46 in Melbourne, 41 in Titusville, 37 in Daytona Beach, 39 in Bithlo, and 42 in St. Cloud. So highs tomorrow are going to trend in the right direction, but they're still going to be well below average. I mean, today we're about 57. Tomorrow will be about 69-ish for an afternoon high. But again, yeah, definitely historic cold. Remarkable, in fact, how early in the year it was. Let me see if I can pull up the graphic here that Brooks made this morning for the record lows. I don't know where it went. Give me a second. Let's see if I can pull it up here. I think this is going to be it. Let's see. Oh, it's not, but okay, so this is some good context here. So while we're on the subject of cold, you can check out these stats here. So the coldest temperature ever in Florida was the 1899 cold air outbreak. The air temp got to -2 in Tallahassee. The coldest Orlando temperature was 18 in December of 1894. The last time it was this cold was January 15th of 2023. So while we are nowhere near as cold as it's been previous, definitely it's pretty close to not being comfortable for more than a day. If we had this for a few days, it would definitely be pretty uncomfortable. So let me show you the radar out there tonight. Here we are on the exclusive radar. It's about 3:14 p.m. Thanks to all of you watching on Facebook, YouTube, and again on Fox Local. Fox Local, friends, remember you'll see a break coming up at 3:20. So lots of good questions. William says, did you wear your coat today? I did. I actually remembered my Fox 35 jacket, which was much needed because it was actually freezing earlier today. It still is freezing, but it was super freezing this morning. Jessica says, watching from Florida, I'm used to the cold. I was born in Kentucky. Well, Florida, like Kentucky, the cold can be a whiplash oftentimes where it's cold and then it's storming and hot a few days later. Now, it's not going to be storming here, but it's going to be way warmer than what it is right now by the middle part of next week. And you can see there on the radar right now, there's nothing doing. Now, one storyline we're going to watch over the next couple of weeks and really months is drought. And I know this seems like crazy to mention because we still have areas of Eustis, Mount Dora, and Titusville dealing with the extreme flooding from a few weeks ago. But this is definitely going to be something you hear more about in the next few months. We already have extreme drought now in the Florida Panhandle. The Tampa area, we now have moderate drought. You see the stages of drought here on the top of your screen, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Water shortages generally start extreme and exceptional. But come the springtime, we're in a La Nina pattern. So generally La Nina in winter, that's the pattern over North America. La Nina in winter means dry. Now, it normally does rain in the winter. This is a misconception, one of many I've learned in Florida, that I make it my life mission to make Floridians, we're all on the same page with this. It does rain in the winter in Florida. It's amazing how often I get asked this when it rains in January about I didn't think it rains in January. I don't know whoever said that in the weather, but it does rain. So when we talk about above or below normal, in December, January, February, the average rain is only like 1.5 or 2 inches per month, which in the grand scheme of things is really not much. But if we're below 1.5 inches of rain, that's close to zero. So generally in La Nina, Florida almost always is drier than normal. We go through long stretches where it doesn't rain anything, zero. So this is going to be something we have to watch. If the pattern holds through winter, this drought is going to expand across the state, and we'll have probably a large part of the state severe or extreme drought. It happens most La Nina winters going into spring. So by February, March, and April of next year, wildfire season, drought, those could be things in the headlines. So this is just something to table for, in the back of our heads for the next few weeks and months. Is we do have developing drought, and going forward, there's really no clear sign of any big rain in sight anytime soon. So there's the radar tonight. Things are good and dry. Show you the satellite. You can notice pretty cool, actually, interestingly. So let me turn off this layer here. Now, what we call these are cloud streets. Actually, quite interesting. So if you look here, there's a lot of clouds out over the water, and there's a lot of clouds here out over the Gulf. And the clouds here from the Carolinas into the Gulf, this is only being caused because the really cold air up to the north, remember we've got really cold air up here, up across the deep south, this is blowing over the warm Gulf waters. And the water in the Gulf and in the Atlantic is still in the 70s. And it's interesting, you see there's no real clouds over Florida, but there's these clouds, they come in these little streets over here, over here, over here, over here. They're called cloud streets. You see how they're just aligned in these little rows. That's when it's like lake effect. You blow really cold air over warm water, and you get clouds to form, but they don't overland. You see there's no clouds over, low clouds over Orlando, but you go west and east over the water, and there's a lot of clouds. So it's definitely kind of an interesting thing to point out there. By the way, the cold front, look how far east it's made it. This is our high-res radar, so that's why the domain is only this right here. High-res satellite, I mean. Here's the cold front. This is Bermuda right here. The cold front is now east of Bermuda. It's almost through the Bahamas. It's almost to Jamaica. So places like Nassau and even Cancun and Cozumel, all getting the very cool air from the north. So this cold front has made it well even into the Caribbean out there for tonight, heading into tomorrow. So we're going to take a quick break here. I will be right back on Fox Local coming up at 3:22. But those of you on Facebook, YouTube, keep watching. I'll be right back. I'll talk to you much more about the cold and also the warm-up that's coming next week. I'll take a quick break for about 60 seconds. I'll see you back here in just a second. Over the next couple of days. So let's talk about the warm-up, shall we? This is the forecast here for next week. Let's put this up here. Yeah, so look at this. This right here is the forecast for next Thursday. Look at that. Look at that. So if you are sick of the cold, this is something to look forward to for next week. It's going to be warm. It's going to be nice. I don't think there's going to be rain through at least next Thursday. But yeah, this is a complete 180 from where we are right now. All right, so any more questions, please send them in. I'd love to hear from you. Southwestern Ontario, Canada here on YouTube. Hello, how are you? You need a hot chocolate for your voice. I'm actually not a huge hot chocolate fan, William. I did wear my coat today, William. I obviously I know who Eric is. I don't know him that well, but yes, another Orlando person. Are we getting any more hurricanes? Twin Smile Aviation on YouTube. Are we getting any more hurricanes? Are we done for the season? Sure, I'll show you that in a hot second. So here's the temperatures for next week, though. Mid-80s by next Thursday. So if you hate the cold, that is something to look forward to about a week out from now. So many of you are asking about the hurricane season, so let's take a look. So here's a plot. This is the European model. We're talking about, this is the chance of tropical development over the next 10 days. Interesting, notice there's this zone way up in the northeastern Atlantic. I doubt that's going to do anything. We'll see. So here's the chances of a tropical storm in the next 10 days. I don't buy this system up here. This system up here in the northeast Atlantic. I think this is probably far-fetched. But notice right here in the southern Caribbean, there is still a zone here of maybe some development over the next few days, which I still kind of do think is going to happen. We haven't seen it yet. Right now, the Hurricane Center still says there's no activity over the next week. But take you here on the GFS model, and we'll look. Notice, let's take a look here. We'll put up the vorticity chart. See a little area of spin. In fact, it kind of generates two systems. One here on the East Pacific, and one here in the southern Caribbean. Weak little systems down there. They barely even register on the precip chart today. Yeah, it doesn't even look like much. Check out the European model today. You can't even really see much. So probably for us, it's done at this point. There's still, I think, maybe one or two more systems